You're watching what is a beautiful day for a bike race. It is, of course, Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and it is La Doyenne, the oldest classic on the books. A very sunny afternoon in the hilly part of Wallonia in Belgium. Finish line in Anse is waiting for the final time. That hill before it all changes next year and goes back to the centre of Liège itself. Who's going to win it? Is it going to be a record-equalling time for Alejandro Valverde? We will see. For now, though, it's time to go and have a look at what happened exactly a year ago today. Liège-Bastogne-Liège 2017. Well, 7 riders were in the early break. Thiago Machado there, Anthony Perez was there as well, Rossetto, Grelier, Gate, de Klerk and Van der Leek. Riders attacking all the time. Good group of riders behind them pursuing too. It all kicked off in the bunch. De Marchi was a man to follow. Pierre Latour having a go as well. And 44 kilometres to go under grey skies and quite a cold day. There were plenty of riders trying to take what would be an historic win in their careers. Sergio now having a go on the Rochefort-Faucon. This guy who had won the race, of course, the year before with Wout Poels. On that occasion in the snow and miserable conditions. Anthony Perez and Stéphane Rossetto would be 30 seconds ahead. Perez too tired. Then Wellens would have a go. But with 9 kilometres remaining, the Italian riders would have a go. Once they're onto that finale in Ons, Dan Martin trying to sprint out and repeat the victory he'd pulled off just a few years before. Look behind though, Alejandro Valverde making the move up to the Irishman, right on his wheel, and then the Valverde procession was complete. He's the man everybody had talked about in the build-up, and the man who won it for a 4th time. So Valverde with a victory, hands in the air, and Movistar with their Spaniard taking yet another win and the hardest classic in the books. A happy man, and of course it was an emotional time with Michele Scarponi having died just the day before. Valverde, a good friend of the late Italians, dedicating his win to his good mate. So 4th time for Valverde. Remember, he'd already won it against Alaphilippe Rodriguez towards the end of his career. And what did Valverde think of all this? Well, Liège is one of my favourite races on the international calendar. I've won it 4 times. I intend to win it again, but it's not going to be easy. The rivals are very strong. It's going to be complicated. Flèche was more difficult. Of course, Alaphilippe's very good, and I'm here to have a good race, though. Valverde mentioning that Flèche on Wednesday was more difficult. I wonder why. This man is the answer, Julien Alaphilippe. He'd only ever finished 2nd in that race. Now he's at the top. Alaphilippe coming into Liège, hoping to be the first French hope to win this race in a staggering 38 years. Well, the win was perfect timing for me at Flèche Wallonne. I've been waiting for a big win for a long time. Having succeeded, especially in Flèche as well, in front of Valverde, is really special for me. It was a beautiful reward. I'd love to win a 2nd time in well, 4 days. But I'd like that. I think other riders would like that as well. So it's hard, but that's why we're all here. Talking of wins, Vincenzo Nibali pulled a very special one off at Milano-San Remo. Can he be the first Italian to win this for over 10 years? The Shark in good shape. He showed that already on Wednesday on the attack. How's he feeling about this race? I'm not sure. We'll see how the race is going to run through. Of course, I'm an attacker. I intend to make the race harder in La Redoute if my teammates are in good shape. It's a race that fits my ability, I think. The terrain is very good. And of course, I'm going to try and remain calm on that terrain and focused on my own race. Well, talking of that route, this is how it looks. 11 climbs on the map, plus that finale into Ans itself. The final time as they go from Liège to Bastogne, back to Liège. Well, not quite Liège. Ans, the outskirts, that famous Italian neighbourhood. And there the hills. Saint-Nicolas this time, the last climb, but of course that famous 3 climbs towards the end. La Redoute, Rochefort-Faucon, and then Saint-Nicolas, on which the final attacks can go before the rise into Ans itself. Well, look over into the beautiful hilly landscape of Wallonia. It's in the industrial suburbs of Ans where we will finish, however, and it's quite a beautiful day for it. 25, 26 degrees even. Very, very warm for April. And lots of different riders, lots of different teams looking to make it very difficult. One of those riders rides for Lotto Soudal. Here's Tim Wellens.
I think if you really want to go for victories, the Saint-Nicolas is really important. I think La Redoute is a little bit too early in the race, but the Saint-Nicolas and Côte d'Ans, the 2 most important mountains for the victory. I think we will not wait all 3 until the last kilometer, but first we have to see how the race develops, and then we anticipate during the race and we see how the legs are. In Paris-Nice I could beat Alaphilippe in the sprint, but Valverde in the sprint I have never beaten, so that will not be easy, but it's still a long race to go until the sprint. I think it will be hard enough, and if you really have the good legs in the final, it's possible to go away.
Possible to go in the way in the final, says Tim Wellens. Let's have a look at who's done what in the last few years. Of course, domination from one man in the last 10 to 11 years. Alejandro Valverde, winner twice in the last 3, 4 times overall. The man who today could equal the great cannibal himself, Eddy Merckx, on 5 victories. Former winners here as well. Simon Gerrans is riding, Dan Martin as well. Philippe Gilbert, a winner in 2011, hopes to repeat that feat today for Quick-Step. In terms of nations, this is what it looks like. Domination from Belgium, as you'd expect as a Belgian race. But the Italians next up with 12 victories. Spain's 4 wins, all going to the same man. 3 Irish wins. We looked at the one from Dan Martin. There's a man alongside me in the commentary box who has 2 of them as well. Sean Kelly with a couple of wins in the 1980s. So what happened at the start? Tosh van der Sande, Maxime Montfort, Jelle van Endert, all in demand. There was Tish Benoot as well, a man that's not been talked about too much, but very capable with his characteristics in the future of winning these sorts of races. Tim Wellens is in form. He looked so good as he won a bike race for the 20th time in his career at Brabantse Pijl a couple of weeks ago. Dan Martin hasn't looked good this season. He's with a new team in UAE Emirates, hoping to pull out his best form today. And look out for Michael Matthews, a sprinter, but a sprinter who can climb better than most. Dylan Turns has been going well for BMC Racing. And local eyes on Philippe Gilbert, the local lad from just down the road in Verviers, and a former winner of this race, 7 years ago now. His teammate, Julien Alaphilippe, might be better placed than he to pick up a victory today. But not all the pressure of the team, as is the way with the Wolfpack on one man. All eyes on one man though, and that was Alejandro Valverde of Movistar, hoping to become the joint record man at this race at the end of the day. Talking of records, 38 years since a Frenchman won the race. Romain Bardet there as well. And Vincenzo Nibali hoping to do it for the Italians. Nice sunny weather will suit Alejandro Valverde. There's one thing he doesn't like, it's the rain and the cold. Unseasonably warm at the end of spring after it had been unseasonably bitterly cold for most of it. 25 teams of 7 riders setting out, 175 riders on the course. And the first attacks would come pretty quickly at the start of the day. Nine riders in the end would get away. 9 riders getting an advantage of about 6.5 minutes. The first couple of hours ridden at an average pace, 38.4 kilometers per hour after 2 hours. First hour at just under 40. So not the quickest and most aggressive starts we've seen. Aqua Blue getting 2 riders up in the breakaway. Tell you that most of the smaller invited professional continental teams are represented. Not too many big names up there. Big day for Loic Vliegen at the back as well. Just 40 days after breaking his scaphoid in the breakaway and enjoying himself on a good tough day out. Important week for BMC after they very sadly lost their team owner Andy Rees at the age of 75 earlier in the week. So no surprise to see them represented at the front of the race. Peloton on behind with a mixture of teams working. UAE Emirates riding for Dan Martin. Quickstep doing a lot of work. Lotto Soudal doing a lot of work. But nobody forcing neither Bahrain, a strong team, or the team everybody was looking at, Movistar, to do any work earlier in the day. Tactical questions that will be asked throughout the race. As we go live to the final 107.4 kilometers right now. Let's tell you straight away who's in the break then with a 4-minute and 16-second advantage. There are 9 riders there, and from the top division of cycling from the World Tour, there's Loic Vliegen, the Belgian, as they're coming on to the Côte de Montluçois, 4 kilometers long at 6.1%. The man in the white jersey and black shirt there on your screen is Florian Vachon, Frenchman. Rider from Cofidis, another Frenchman, one of 3 Frenchmen in this break. Anthony Perez, he's in the red jersey. We've got 2 riders wearing the navy blue of Aqua Blue Sport, the Irish team. They are Mark Christian, the Manxman, and Casper Pedersen, riding track rider from Denmark. Jérôme Bournier is there for Wanty Gubert, the Belgian team. As we take a look at our profile yet again, Paul Ursulin, Matthias van Krompel and Antoine Warnier making up the top 9 riders. 258 kilometers to take on, and they're on the 3rd of 11 climbs, that Côte de Montluçois. Heading up to the highest point in this particular race this year, well above 500 meters, 106 kilometers to go. Alongside me, a 2-time winner of this race in the commentary box. A very good sunny and warm afternoon to Sean Kelly.
Yes, well, lovely weather, maybe a little bit too hot for the final of this one. Some of the riders will, feel the heat there out today, but better this way than in the cold, wet, sleety, snowy weather we had 2 years ago when World Pools won it. It was horrible conditions, so I think everybody will be happy, but it's just one where you have to be careful with the warm conditions. But a great day for a bike race here, and yeah, it's going to be a spectacular final. And when you look at the start list, and I think there's a lot of riders thinking with the better weather conditions. I think there's more of the guys who maybe not the top favourites, but just a bit under that, they'll be thinking, well, with the better conditions, I can be in there with a shot for victory today.
Alejandro Valverde has been dominant in the last few years. Maybe a little bit of a chink in his armour shown on Wednesday when the rest of the peloton managed to work down the Movistar team, put them under pressure. He was isolated on that final climb after Lander had worked so well. He was still only beaten into 2nd place. It's not like he was nowhere out of the way, but again, a ray of light at the end of a long, difficult tunnel for everyone trying to take on Valverde, who's already won 9 times this season.
Yes, well, I think when you look at the past record he has here, look the way he's riding as well of recent, the races, he is in top shape. Flèche Wallonne, the Mur de Huy is a special one. If you just get to the Mur de Huy and you're not just at your best form, well, then you can get cut out a little bit, but he's still by far the big favourite here.
Well, we're going to look at the end of the women's race here, the Liège-Bastogne women, and of course it's Bulls Dolmans again dominating this race. They were so strong last week with Chantal Black, who was out there and doing her best to absolutely destroy everybody else at Amstel Gold, and Anna van der Breggen, who was so good in Flèche Wallonne on Wednesday again, looks as though she's going to do the double-double. Anna van der Breggen leading the UCI Women's World Tour. Nobody can live with Bulls Dolmans at the moment in the racing. Nobody can live with Anna van der Breggen in Ardennes week. It is 3 races out of 3 for Bulls Dolmans. It's 2 out of 2 again for van der Breggen. And well, we talked about Valverde dominating. Van der Breggen is there once more. She won Flèche for a 4th time the other day. She wins Liège-Bastogne-Liège again. And Bulls Dolmans on top of the world and holding on to that jersey with Anna van der Breggen. There's Ashley Moolman chasing on the South African star for Cervelo Bigler. Annemiek van Vleuten has been racing pretty well yet again as well. Mitchelton Scott are in there, but Anna van der Breggen, well, complete dominance, and I suppose Bulls Dolmans is the quick step of the peloton at the moment here.
Well, Liège-Bastogne-Liège, if you have the riders with the form, well, then you can do a lot here, and it's an easy race. I think Philippe Gilbert was talking. He said Liège-Bastogne-Liège, there's not 40 ways to win this one. If you're good, well, then it's a simple race. You just follow, comes to the point, and then you just do your business and go in the tech if you need to, or otherwise just wait for the sprint.
Well, sprint for second place here. Looks as though Ashley Moolman is about to be pipped at the post. It's been a brilliant effort from Annemiek van Vleuten to finish here in second place. Van Vleuten makes it a Dutch 1-2. And of course Ashley Moolman rounding out the podium as well. 3 riders who've been strong all week long. Sean was saying it's an honest race, this one. Team Sunweb having riders up the road. There's a couple of riders from Wild Eels and Ale Cipollini as well. But Liège-Bastogne-Liège Femme comes to an end with yet another victory for Anna van der Breggen, pardon me. .104.1 kilometres to go in the men's race. So 4 minutes 15 is the gap between 9 riders up the road and those chasing. Interesting to see UAE Emirates chasing here. Nobody's making Movistar doing any work, and for me, as very much a lay person who doesn't understand this stuff anywhere near as much as the likes of you, Sean, I look at that and I think, what are they playing at?
Well, you're exactly right. You would expect Movistar, the team that would be made, do the chasing here, because if you take Movistar with a number of riders into the final, then it's going to be very difficult, because they will control it all the way and just release Valverde in the final kilometre, and if that's the case, he's almost impossible to beat. So it's all about numbers, and if you look at some of the teams where they have maybe 2-3 riders, they're going to try some of the final. They have to, because but if Valverde arrives with teammates in the very final, well, then it's going to be a real difficult one, a complicated one for the other teams to try and take the victory here.
Well, just hearing in the Liège-Bastogne-Liège women race, we didn't see Amanda Spratt coming across in second place, so it's actually 2 riders on the podium for Mitchelton Scott. We've done them a disservice. Ashley Moolman bumped out down into 4th place, so Spratt second, Van Vleuten third. Of course, the winner, Anna van der Breggen. We'll be back after this break with the rest of the men's race, the last 100 kilometres, in just a couple of moments' time. Lotto Soudal on the front of the race, trying to make things hard, and you guessed that a lot of people are going to have to make things hard. Descending at the moment, we've got quite a few climbs still to come, 11 categorised climb in total, plus that little rise towards the end in Ans. There's the former world champion Rui Costa. Here's Mitchelton Scott with Emmerich Mas there for quick step as well. Valverde and Landa towards the front. Michał Kwiatkowski racing for Sky. There's a lot of big names and plenty of potential winners, and you look down at the list of teams riding today, Sean, there's a few teams that stand out. Of course, Quick-Step, 26 wins this year. They've won, I think, 11 different one-day races with 7 different riders already this year. But you look at, away from Movistar and Valverde, look at Bahrain Merida, and I'm going to list the 7 riders. Nibali, Gasparotto, both Izaguirres, Pelizzotti, Pozzo Vivo, oh dear. And we'll come back to that in a minute, because we've got a rider on the ground. rider from BMC Racing. It's Alberto Bettiol, and it looks as though he's hit the ground quite hard, unfortunately. Help to his feet, and it is good to see him on his feet. Alberto Bettiol, the Italian one-day specialist, really. He rides well in stage races, but he's come into his own in races such as these. And that's one man for BMC who didn't look like he would be in a good position. In the meantime, this is the rhythm back in the peloton. Now we've got... Is that a spectator he may have had a collision with? Well, the good news is that the medics are on the scene. Until we see a replay, we won't speculate any further as to what's happened there, but just say it didn't look great, I'm afraid, for Alberto Bettiol. I think it was a member of the public who was down there as well and being attended to. Well, Bahrain, we saw they had a really good strong squad with Pozzovivo and Visconti as well, Sean. They have the ability to try and blow this race apart if they can. There's lots of teams with 2 or 3 different riders who could have a go. One of those is UAE, riding here at the front. They have Martin, Rui Costa, Ulissi. Not any particular riders who are in great form. Behind Lotto Soudal are riding. They, of course, have Benoit. They have the man who was on the podium, Fernandez, the other day, and Tim Wellens as well. How do people try and stop Valverde here today?
Well, I think they have to try and go from a bit further out and make the race difficult in the final 60-70 kilometres, and that's where it really kicks off, I suppose, at a 100 where we are. When you get inside the 100 kilometres to go, well, then it does start to kick off, and the hills come, pretty quickly then, and there's a lot of times in that final 100 kilometres which we're going into at the moment, and you have to wait and see and read the race and what the other teams are doing, and if there's an opportunity maybe to go from a long ways out. There is a number of teams who will try that, as you mentioned. Lotto Soudal, they have riders who can do that, and you have to try and take the race up a bit earlier. If you wait for the very, very final with a Valverde in this final run-in, and a Philippe, of course, as well, very, very explosive. Those riders, they're so difficult to beat if you take them down to the final sprint. So I think the tactic will be Bahrain Merida, as you mentioned also, Rob. They have Nibali, of course. Jean Izagri, who's been up there last year. He was fifth, he was in this race. So he's able to do it. He knows the race. And there's a lot of teams like that, and I think that's what we'll see in the final. The good weather, of course, will make it that much easier, and when you get good weather in a race like this, you get more riders capable of going into the final. So we could see a big number of riders going to the very final kilometres here. And that's not the best thing for some of the riders that are not really that explosive, who want to make the race difficult. But you have to, just get on with it and, work to your tactic, and they all will have their own tactics out here today.
Lots of different tactics as we approach the Côte de Pont. Yet again, the organisers have tweaked the route slightly. 3 different climbs have gone. There's no Stokke, Eddy Merckx's playground. We haven't had that for 2 or 3 years now. But one, Haute-Levée, have also disappeared this year as well. This Côte de Pont, where we're approaching now, is 1 kilometre long, 10.5%. It's the 4th of 11 climbs. We started today with the Côte de Bonnerue, which replaced the first climb the last few years, which has been Roche-en-Ardenne. We then went to the Côte de Saint-Roch. Mont-le-Soir, we've just seen as well. That was the 2nd longest climb in the whole race at 4 kilometres long. The longest, by the way, is the 7th of 11 climbs, the Col de Oisier. That's 4.5 kilometres long. Comes up after almost 200 kilometres, and maybe a good time to mention the distance. We've just gone into the last 100 kilometres, and we talked about the different tactics there, Sean, and everybody trying to beat the man that is the big favourite, of course, Valverde. And after winning on Wednesday, how do they beat Alaphilippe, who looked in remarkable form? Well, one thing that we haven't talked about yet is the distance. 260 kilometres as opposed to the 200 on Wednesday makes it a very different race.
Yes, well, it is an interesting one, that extra kilometres, some riders have difficulty in managing that, and when you get a final like this, this final 90 kilometres, there's there's 8, I think, categorised climbs, but the run up to the finish as well, you could really call that a climb as well. It's not very steep, but when you're riding up there, the final 1500 metres, and you're riding at 40 kilometres per hour after doing 258 kilometres, it does hurt a lot. So the distance, the kilometres will all count here, and yeah, we can see there Lotto are starting to push on. They want to make the race a bit more difficult, but the surprising thing is, once again, we can see Movistar are getting a free ride here for the moment, and that's not going to be a good thing for some of the riders who want to go on the attack, because if Valverde has 2 or 3 good riders with him, they can control, they can make the pace on the front of that peloton. If it's going to be maybe 60 or 80 riders in the final, that's the perfect scenario for Valverde.
Like de Douillard. It's actually a really scenic area once you get out of the industrial type towns. It does remind me quite a lot of the north of England, lots of beautiful hills, industrial, post-industrial towns as well around that give a lot of Wallonia a bit of a bad rap, but it's beautiful once you're in the countryside around here. Head of the race, 4 minutes 11 seconds up the road. They will not be worried about this breakaway back in the peloton. There's Paul Ursulin in the black jersey. 176 there is Kasper Pedersen, the track rider from Denmark, riding for Aqua Blue Sport, the Irish team. We're back right after this. On the Côte du Pont, 91 kilometres remain. 4 minutes for the breakaway. 9 riders out on the road. If you're just joining us, I'll tell you who those 9 riders are. There are 4 Belgians there. Antoine Warnier is there alongside Matthias van Kompel, a neo-pro, just 22 years of age. Right at the back here, riding for Sport Vlaanderen. As an amateur, actually, he won a race called La Philippe Gilbert. And he's going to go past the place where the finish line was. The question is, will he still be at the front of the race? Because the finish line on that day was on La Redoute towards the end of this race. And if that breakaway is still there and they get to La Redoute, I'll be very surprised. We will see what happens and how the race happens behind. They've only got 4 minutes and 5 seconds. In the red jersey of Cofidis here, it's Anthony Perez, French rider. Mark Christian's there from the Isle of Man, riding for Aqua Blue Sport. His teammate Kasper Pedersen, the Dane, is there as well, as is Florian Vachon. Jérôme Bonnier is another of the 4 Belgians. Paul Ursulin is the man there representing Fortuner Samsic. And the only rider from the World Tour in this break, Loic Vliegen, BMC Racing Team. And of course, just 40 days ago, he was in hospital with a fractured scaphoid. He actually broke it at the end of the Norkera course, coming back from the anti-doping control. He was riding away from the race. I think he was hit, went down, and he was off the bike for a good month. And it's been a sad week, hasn't it, Sean, for BMC, because they lost their benefactor and the man who made BMC bikes, Andy Rees, at 75.
Yes, well, it has been a difficult week for them, and of course Andy Rees, he's been a big supporter and a huge follower of cycling, and he's been there for many years. He's been sick for a while, but sadly he passed away during the week. But yeah, the team, they just get on with it, and I suppose the interesting thing is people are already asking where's the team going to go, because there's a lot of talk about BMC were talking not continuing sponsorship. Will this have an effect? We'll have to wait and see. For the moment, it would be a disappointing one to see the team disappearing, but again, we'll just have to wait for a bit more to see what happened there.
We'll have to see what happens with BMC Racing. In the meantime, we send all of our best to Andy Rees' family and friends, and of course everybody in the team. Not an easy few days to cope with. Bram Tankink fans are on the road. He was in the break a week ago at Amstel Gold. As the first man to start suffering is the 24-year-old Wallon rider Antoine Warnier of WB Aqua Protect Veran Classic. Good to see Aqua Blue Sport, getting a couple of riders in the break. And I know you were looking forward to watching Eddie Dunbar hang around in the peloton this week, as opposed to riding in the break and seeing what he can do towards the end.
Yes, very much so. We did see him in the Amstel where he went to that breakaway very early, and it's almost guaranteed the breakaway is not going to survive here, and we can see here today, 3:53 at the moment with 90 kilometres to go, and the difficult part of this race still has to come. So the breakaway, always, very, very difficult to see it succeeding. Good to see Eddie, in the main peloton. Now we will see what he can do in the end and how far he can go in this race, because I think he has the talent, and he needs to, to hold back a bit. Because our viewers, of course, who are not really into biking, if you go into the breakaway, you put in so much work in here in the front with 9 riders, where back in the peloton, if you sit back 20th place, you get carried along. The amount of energy you can conserve in the first 150 kilometres is enormous, and that's why the big favourites, we never see them in the earlier part of the race. They spring into action 50, 60 kilometres to finish. That's the time they will start really appearing on our screens here. So for Eddie, that's what he's got to do. He's got to learn how to ride the final of a race, and he's only 21, so he's got a lot of years ahead of him, but he still has to start doing it at some point.
The man at the front of the race on the right-hand side, his job hasn't changed really, has it? He's changed teams from Movistar to UAE Emirates. Rory Sutherland used to ride for Alejandro Valverde, now rides for Dan Martin. This is something we put across on Wednesday when Flèche Wallonne was on, Sean, and interesting that Dan Martin has a bit more of an insight into how Alejandro Valverde rides now, having Rory Sutherland on his team.
Well, I think Dan has experience in how Valverde ride. He knows exactly what the tactic will be, but again, it's always comforting when you have a teammate of Valverde for so many years in your ranks, for this race and for the races to come this season. So it is a good thing, but I think Dan, he knows what he has to do here in this final. We can see Monfort as well, who is a local here, Maximum Monfort. He's setting the pace on the front there. So Lotto, they're interested in this race, and as we mentioned, they have a number of riders who they will try and use in the final kilometres, meaning the final 25-30 kilometres. We could see some of them riders from Lotto trying to break up this peloton and go into the attack and form a breakaway, maybe of 5 or 6 stronger riders in the final, and see what they can do, because Valverde, he is the one. It's going to be the difficult one to manage. If you take him into the final kilometres, very difficult to shake him then.
Well, you talked about being pulled along in the peloton. That's exactly what's happening at the minute. He's in about 15th to 20th position. He's with Mikel Landa, who looked like he was on some fine form on Wednesday as well, emptying his tank for the team. Monfort, the local man you talked at the front. Just while you were putting that point across, there was Ruben Guerreiro, the Portuguese champion, in trouble at the back. Same was Floris de Tier, who you'd expect to be up there a little bit further at this point in the race. He was struggling off the back, the Lotto NL Jumbo man. Lotto NL Jumbo, who come, by the way, with Robert Heersing today. The Dutchman, Bert-Jan Lindemann riding too. There's number 16, second wheel there is Rory Sutherland. Number 14 just behind him is Manuele Mori, rider who's ridden for a long, long time in Italian setups, and of course UAE being an Emirati-based team, still managed by a group of Italians. Breakaways started to get organised again after a few riders were struggling on the last climb. But they come thick and fast now. This is the Côte de Bellevaux, just 1.1 kilometres long. 6.8% average on the right hand side in the Wanty navy blue, yellow and white. You can see Jérôme Bonny. Succession of climbs here in Liège, Bastogne, Liège is torture on the legs. Almost 5,000 metres of climbing in this race. Compare it to the other classics, Sean. Of course, you won 4 of the 5 monuments, multiple occasions as well. Where does this one rank for you? How do you see Liège, Bastogne, Liège?
Well, it's a lovely race to ride, and people ask me the classics. You talk about Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix. I say to them, well, they're not the nicest races to ride. Sometimes they say they're pretty horrible races to ride, but they're great races to win. And if you're the style of rider that can win a Paris-Roubaix or a Tour of Flanders, well then, it's great to have it on your palm race, because you dream about it. When you're amateur, and especially when you become professional, if you feel that you're that type of rider, you can do well in the earlier years. You can finish up pretty good in your first years, and there's room for improvement. Well, then you focus on that, and that's what I did during my career. But Liège, Bastogne, Liège, Lombardy, Tour of Lombardy at the end of the season. Nice races if you're in good shape. If you're not in good shape and you go into them, they're horrible because you suffer so much. People do not realise here in the Ardennes area of Belgium how difficult it is. These climbs, they go up for a number of kilometres, quite difficult. There's a lot of difficult terrain, and people are surprised. There's that much hilly ground, hilly roads here in Belgium, but it is a difficult one. And I've ridden the Sean Kelly Classic, which is going on for many years here. I did it a number of times, and you have the classified climbs here, which we have in this Liège-Bastogne-Liège, but there's so many other climbs there that they don't talk about. It's just up and down most of the day, and it's a very, very difficult country here, this part of Belgium, to race in.
Not too much easy terrain, and the weather conditions not making it too easy either. We've got an attack. We have movement from one of the Aqua Blue riders. It's Casper Pedersen who's going to the top of the climb here. Of course, there are the mini prizes for the King of the Mountains as well, place at the podium at the end of the day, which is important for the sponsors. But it's all breaking this group up. We did have 9 riders. We've lost a couple on the way up there. And just while we were talking as well, you saw the riders move. There was a strong wind blowing across the road then.
Yes, well, you can get this as well. Of course, you get into an area where it can be blowing. And when you're going at, very fast rate, when the race will be really on, that will have an effect, as it does. You do not need a lot of wind, but when you're really racing, as they call it, full gas, well then, the little bit of windy conditions, if you get out into an open section, it can cause problems, and it can, you can see little echelons where they ride when they're really going full on. And we did see there for the mountain classification, of course, there's 11 points where there's €500 available for first over the top. So the guys in the breakaway, they're thinking, I'm in the breakaway, I'm getting the exposure for my team here on TV all around the world, but it's nice to pick up a few euros on the way.
Holiday Euros for the end of the classic season. For a few guys, this will be the end of the first part of their season, won't it? It'll be holiday time after this week.
Yes, well, there's a lot of the riders, who have been doing a lot of the classics. They will take a break now and rest up. But not a lot of rest, really. Probably a week, maybe, where they could possibly take a week off, but maybe ride their bike 2 or 3 times during the week and then back again with light training and start build up for the rest of the season. And the interesting one is, I was looking at, the classics we've had, the Milan-San Remo's, Roubaix, Flanders, only 2 riders who started all 4, which is Jos van Enden and Philippe Gilbert.
Gilbert up at the pointy end in many of them. Van Enden has attacked a few times, but he's not finished up towards the top. But yeah, for Philippe Gilbert especially, I think it will be holiday time. He's been riding for a lot of the year. One man who had to take a bit of an enforced holiday in inverted commas at the start of the year due to injuries is Michael Matthews, who's back.
Yeah, I've been working a lot with my osteo this week here in Maastricht, and yeah, he's really got me back into some sort of shape where I can try and contest in a race. So we've been doing a lot of work on my shoulder and also my back to be able to get the strength again, and I'm starting to feel a bit more strength, so it's a good feeling.
What kind of race would be good for you?
A fun race where we can all just go out there and just enjoy ourselves. I think it's meant to be beautiful weather again tomorrow, so I'm just enjoying every part of this classics. I'm just happy to be back racing again and to be in some sort of shape where I can try and contest.
That's nice to hear. Somebody wanted to enjoy their time on the bike. Michael Matthews, potential winner of this race in the next few years, isn't he?
Well, he would really love to see a group of 30 riders going to finish here, but he's not going to say that because it would get out pretty quickly. He's not giving anything away which the riders are known for before the race. But yeah, if it comes to the finish with a group of 25, 35 riders, 40 riders, that would be the perfect scenario for Michael Matthews, because in the sprint, depending what you've got left, and that is the thing here, a sprinter, can get to the finish, but you have to, really dig deep on a lot of those climbs, and by the time you get to the finish here in Ons, you can be pretty much, emptied out of all your energies. And if that is the case, well then, it's a difficult one, because it's an uphill sprint, and the final run up to the finish it's a difficult one, as we talked about a bit earlier. So if you haven't got the form, well then you're going to pay the price.
A couple of riders paying the price in the breakaway. Michael Matthews, though, as we see Pedersen on the attack still, out on his own at the front. Rest of the break still trying to catch him. But Matthews came here for the first time in 4 seasons last year. On his debut back in 2013, he finished 128th. When he came back for the second time last year, he finished 4th. He was 5th in Flèche Wallonne on Wednesday, despite not having raced much this year. he doesn't have bad form for a man who hasn't been riding too many kilometres.
Not at all. I think he's coming back, and he's in good shape. The race today, depending on what we have now in this final 80 kilometres, how difficult it will be. If they continue on riding on the front, we can see Lotto and the other teams controlling here. If it continues in that way, well, then he could go a long ways into the final. He will be in the final, but if they start attacking each other, and some of the teams who have a number of riders capable of winning here, if they start attacking a long ways out, meaning 60 kilometres from the finish, well, then that will make it difficult for him. But we know Matthews, he's a good sprinter, but he's a great climber as well. We seen the Tour of France last year, the way he broke it up, went in the breakaways, and that's the way he won the green jersey.
It's a warm day, a beautiful day for a bike race at the Old Lady of the Classics. This is Casper Pedersen, leader of the race, 3 minutes and 49 seconds ahead of those chasing him. You could just see his navy blue jersey, aqua blue sport, full of salt marks. A lot of sweating going on, a lot of fluids needing to be replaced. It's more like a Giro or a Tour de France day today.
Yes, well, it is very warm conditions, and for a Liège, Bastogne, Liège, it's exceptionally warm. We've had it a number of times. I remember back in my day as well, we had some days where it was quite warm, but in general, it's cool or more horrible conditions, wet, cold weather conditions. But yeah, this one today, that will also be that you have to keep on eating and keep on drinking more, so you have to be very careful because of 260 kilometers over such a difficult terrain, that you have to be careful. Hydration is very, very important.
Hydration important to keep the legs turning as well for Antoine Warnier and company. You can see that this breakaway is breaking up so much that we've now got from groups 1 to 5 there. Group 5, the peloton at 3 minutes and 46 seconds. They're all over the road right now. It's not going to do the break any favours, is it, the fact that they're splitting up like this?
No, and I think the break, they realised for quite a long time that this is not going to go anywhere into the final, and they're just thinking about getting maximum exposure, and that's what we have with Aqua Blue here and out in front. And they're also, going to try and take as many of the mountain classification premiums as possible. We did see that on the previous climb there, and that's the reason the weaker ones are starting to struggle and they're starting to lose contact out of the breakaway.
They're getting contracts rather than
maybe
losing them,
contracts as well.
Hopefully, certainly Casper Pedersen's 22 years of age. He's got another year after this one at Aqua Blue Sport. He's a strong track rider as well, as we see the Cathédrale de Saint-Pierre on the screen right now. But yeah, just one win in his career so far, Casper Pedersen, but he's only 22, strong on the track as I mentioned. He won a stage of the Tour of Denmark last year, and of course is the European under-23 champion in the road race, so he knows how to race a bike. He had a lovely position over the bike there as well, very aero. Technically, if he's going to come from the track, he's going to be very good anyway. And well, Aqua Blue getting young riders on board. In the meantime, at the front of the race, the pace is pretty high at the minute. We saw Maxime Monfort working hard not so long ago. I was told that the 4th hour is the fastest hour we've ridden so far in the race, so a lot of teams trying to make this aggressive early on, and we've seen Lotto trying to do that. I think you can see the result of it on the screen with people fighting for places. We haven't seen one big bunch at the front of the peloton for quite a while now. Interesting to see how it goes. A lot of road furniture to take on here. A few Movistar riders bonny hopping. There's Valverde on the right hand side, in fact. Vincenzo Nibali not too far away.
Road furniture everywhere as you go through the smaller towns, villages. That is something we see more and more of, where these street furniture, as they call it in biking, it can be as quite dangerous. There's nobody there signalling when you're riding along at this pace. Not too difficult, but in the final, if they're really pushing on full on, that is the danger. And yeah, it's a one where you have to be careful. You have to keep alert all the time. And although we talked about the big favourites, they can sit back there in the peloton, but still you have to concentrate all the time. It's not that you can totally turn off, because at any time you can get into problems and a crash can occur.
This is the Côte de la Ferme Libère. Casper Pedersen leading what's left of the breakaway behind onto it. Ferme Libère at 1.2 kilometres, very steep. 12.1%. And it's a pretty constant, horrible gradient all the way up. You can see how pronounced the gradient is if you look on the right-hand side there, the angle at which people are stood to the road, where the cars are parked there. The fact that the riders, many of them, out of the saddle. 23 seconds behind Pedersen at the moment. In the meantime, back to go to the interview microphone at the start of the race today.
I think it will be an aggressive race today. Maybe from us also, we have to anticipate and try to isolate Alejandro Valverde, and because he's the big favorite. So we will try to see if we can have numbers in the final and do a good job for the team and especially for Jakob.
Well, they're riding for Jakob Fuglsang Astana today. They've had a very good week in terms of wins, of course. 3 stage wins at the Tour of the Alps. Valgren himself, the man we heard from there, the Dane Michael Valgren, was the winner of Amstel Gold last weekend. Same year he won Omloop at Nieuwsblad as well, as Pedersen, his compatriot here riding for Aqua Blue, goes on to the 15% section. Remember, 12.1% is the average gradient for this clay. And well, Jakob Fuglsang, is he the right man they should be riding for today?
Well, I think that Fuglsang is in good shape. We did see him in Amstel. He was very active, and he was the one who opened up the race. And then, of course, Valgren, he just made the move. And I think they worked it perfectly from Astana, because they could see that with Sagan, he wanted to just kind of follow and see could he get it to come down to a sprint in the end. Valverde was really the marked man, and
3.5 minutes the gap, approaching the final 75 kilometres now. A very warm welcome back. 73.6 kilometres to go. 3.5 minutes is the gap. I gather that some of you experienced a few sound issues, so we apologise for that. Hopefully your hearing is nice and clear now. Vincenzo Nibali seeing the race nice and clear. There's Rafael Majka as well for Bora Hansgrohe, as winner Anacona in the blue jersey makes his way around him. And we're approaching the meaty end of the race now. The breakaway started out as 9 during the day. I gather we've lost 4 now, down to just 5 riders at the front, but 3.5 minutes, Sean, they're not going to be a factor realistically, are they?
No, not at all. I think they know that for a long time because they were never allowed to, pull out the big advantage. I think last week we did see Amstel plus 15 minutes, if I remember rightly.
I had to look twice at that one when I saw it for the first time.
Yes, so that's what you need, and you need that 15 minute advantage, 120 kilometres before the finish, and then you say to yourself, well, we can go a long ways in this one. You never know how far we can go. If there's a little bit of rivalry between the big teams behind, but today it's not going to be the case. Just under 3.5 minutes at the moment, with still 72.5 kilometres to go and 72.5 very difficult terrain.
Yeah, what's to come then? 72.5 kilometres to go. Of course, we've had 5 of the climbs already. Next climb up is the longest in the race. That's the Col du Oisier. After that, we have the Maquisard, and of course the names just start to reel off the tongue then, don't they? The big, well-known traditional climbs, the likes of the La Redoute, of course. We've got the Rochefaucon, and then Saint-Nicolas. All big names, key names in the history of this great sport.
Yes, well, they're all difficult climbs, and the racing is going to be really full on in a lot of those climbs, because positioning, it will be important, and everybody wants to be in a good position. We can see a bit more clearly now the favourites. We're seeing some of them appearing on our screens. That means tension is building, adrenaline is starting to flow a bit more, and everybody's getting a little bit concerned. They want to stay closer to the front in case some team tries something on some of those climbs. And we've just been going through the feed zone. As we can see, we're still in the feed zone here, and I looked at some of the breakaway riders. I looked at Florian Vachon there. I was wondering, was he going to put on the indicator and go to the team car? But he did take his musette. Actually, he continued on. Chapeau to him, because he is pretty shaken. I think energy levels have gone quite low. We did see him on that previous climb where he did suffer a lot. Côte de la Ferme Libère. It was a difficult one. It was 12%. It's one of the more steeper ones, and you could see the guys from the breakaway that were starting, to feel the fatigue setting in. They were the ones who, really went backwards on that climb.
As a professional, in terms of finishing races, you and I were sat here 2 weeks ago. Roubaix, there's a velodrome at the end of it. There's the prestige of having got over the hell of the north. Finishing is a badge of honour in itself. Is it the same with Liège or any of the other classics?
Well, I think in a race like Paris-Roubaix, it's a flat race. You can lose quite a lot on the couple sections when you're really tired in the end, but nothing like you can lose in a Liège, Bastogne, Liège, when you have those steep climbs and so many of them still to be done in this race today. Well, then you lose a stack of time. The minutes, they just click away so quickly, and you're going to pretty much arrive outside the time limit if you're really starting to fatigue at this moment. So you have to make a decision: do you go on? It depends on the rider as well. If you're a new rider, you're a young rider, you're very keen on getting to the finish. But if you're an old one and you've been in there for a number of years, well, then you say, what's the point?
I think that horrible race 38 years ago, and I'm going to say horrible because I don't think you finished that, did you?
I think
the last time a Frenchman won,
yes,
Bernardino,
and I think I got to about 13 kilometres to the finish and I decided that I couldn't go any further. I was just totally frozen and just not able to change gears, not able to brake, work the brakes on the bike, and there was very few riders finished on that occasion. And I remember starting out of Liège. In the first 10 or 15 kilometres, it started to snow, and there was a lot of riders turning around and going back in the direction of Liège after 15-20 kilometres of the race.
Yeah, I was listening to some anecdotes about that race on the brilliant cycling podcast this week. They've got a French special out, and they talk about the history of this race, and they were saying, I think, that Bernard Hinault himself wanted to abandon the race at one point, but he was going faster to try and stay warm. He found himself ahead and he won it. And amazing that it's been so long since a Frenchman won. realistically, today you're looking at Romain Bardet and Julien Alaphilippe, aren't you, for a French win?
Yes, well, I think...
certainly not this man.
No, certainly not. I think that's a guarantee. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. I think Alaphilippe is the one. Yes, you know, he's in real good form. He's managed to win the Liège after being up in the Ardennes Classics a number of years, and he's coming of age. You know, he's 26 years of age, and you know, some of the pros talked about that a number of weeks ago. Bettini, I think it was, he mentioned that, you know, it's time for Alaphilippe to win some of the big ones now. He's done that on Wednesday past, and you know, that will, I think, give him that, you know, that confidence that when you get the first win, you go on from there, and it's really interesting to see. And I think for a French victory, I think Alaphilippe is the one that, you know, should be able to do it for the French today, if anybody's capable of doing it for a French victory.
Well, he finished second on his debut back in 2015, same as what happened on his Flèche Wallonne debut. We knew he was a special talent, but he's had bad injuries at this time of year in the last couple of years, hasn't he? And he's only 25, so he hasn't gone too far wrong yet, has he? I mean, winning Flèche Wallonne at the age of 25, and there have been later developments in careers.
Yes, well, I apologize, maybe I was giving him 26, but you know, he's 25, 26. That is the time when you are at your strongest. I think in cycling, when you get to, you know, 25, 24, 25, 26, if you've got the talent, you've been shown it over a number of years, it's the time to start winning the big ones. And you know, Alaphilippe, as we said, he's been knocking on the door there. He's been on the steps a number of times, and you know, to get it on Flèche Wallonne on Wednesday, and now, you know, will he be able to do the big one again today? He's definitely one of the he's in there with the top favourites.
Well, talking to the big naughties, French hoodoos that have been falling in recent years, with Demar winning San Remo a couple of years ago for the first time in a long time. That victory on Wednesday, you'd have to say the biggest of Alaphilippe's career, was the first French rider to win at Flèche Wallonne since 1997. So that was a 21-year hoodoo that disappeared. A 38-year one. Wow, that's a long time in coming, and well overdue for a country like France, you'd say.
Well, if he does manage to pull it off today, I think the French, you know, they will be talking him up, and God knows they'll probably have him winning the Tour of France if he gets the victory here in Ons this evening.
God help him. We've got to walk down the street tomorrow anyway. It'd certainly be huge news back in France. I mean, this is, again, for them, the history around this race. This is the oldest classic in the book. The Old Lady, La Doyenne. 104th edition, by the way, for Liège, Bastogne, Liège today. A very special one it would be, as Antoine Warnier looks like he's going to be the next man to be caught. In the meantime, Steve Cummings is being Steve Cummings, back at the peloton, waiting, comfortable enough. See what he can produce, if anything, later on today. 68 k's to go. It's a hard day if you've been riding out there in the break. Florian Vachon all alone and struggling. This is the main group now, and the favourites starting to appear. Movistar for the first time with their faces in the wind. That's their former teammate at the front of the race now, with a black and white UAE jersey on. Rory Sutherland on the right hand side. Meanwhile, Mitchelton Scott appear for the first time on the left as well. Christopher Juhl Jensen with plenty of work to do. Lotto Soudal been riding most of the day. And Daryl Impey on the left hand side now, national champion, reigning national champion of South Africa. Meanwhile, at the back, it's been a very difficult day for young Casper Pedersen. Here he's in the navy blue. In the break early on, now at the back of the main group. Just less than 65 kilometres to go. Sun's still shining on a beautiful day to watch the Old Lady of the Classics. It's going to be pretty hard racing towards the end here. They're almost 200 kilometres in now, and we're approaching that moment when you start to dig into monument distance. And a lot of a difference between a 200-kilometre race and the 260Ks. Almost 5,000 metres of climbing here. For those of you working old money, that's 15,000 feet. On to the longest of the climbs today. Oisier. 4.4 kilometre long, 5.9%. It's the Côte de Oisier, pardon me, Oisier, if you're talking in Flemish. Of course, the Flemish, the other half of Belgium, also have their own name for this race. It's Lurk, Bastogne and Lurk. 4.5 k's of a climb. Comes a bit later in the race this year as well. Quite a few of the climbs have been moved forward by, or moved later in the race rather, by around 4, 5, even 6 and 7 kilometres. Certainly in the case of Rochefort-Faucon. La Redoute as well, coming after 222.5 k's. That's in 2 climbs time. After this we go to the Maquisard. This is what's left of the breakaway, by the way. 5 men are there. The 5 men are Loic Vliegen at the front in the black and red. He's the BMC rider. Returned to racing on Wednesday after a long time out. 40 days out, in fact, following a broken bone. Second is Mark Christian, man from the Isle of Man, riding for the Irish team Aqua Blue Sport. Third wheel there with the fluorescent yellow and navy blue. Rides for Wanty Group Goubert. It's a rider at home, a Wallon rider from the French-speaking part of Belgium, that's Jérôme Bonny. He's still with the Frenchman Paul Orsolin, riding for Diet Energy. And Anthony Perez as well for Cofidis. This in the meantime is Florian Vachon, riding for the Breton team. Breton team Fortuné Samsic changed the name of their second sponsor this year. Of course, their second sponsor had gone to form a new team, Vital Concept, who haven't been invited to this race. 7 teams invited, with the 18 World Tour teams as well. 63.9 k's to go. Vachon's there, 3 minutes 15 seconds. Narrow roads these as well. Of course, let's not forget that part of the classic. A lot of the fight is for the corners, for positioning, and maybe that's the interesting part of seeing sort of GC style riders, general classification riders who ride the big tours, coming to race this, which is the classic, let's face it, that suits them, but they're not used to that battle for position, Sean. That's what can make it difficult for a lot of the GC riders in the classics.
Yes, well, it is a bit more difficult, it's a bit more hectic. When you go to the big tours, of course, you know, you get onto the climbs, and if you're anywhere in, 30th, 40th position, if you're a good climber, you can move up on the climbs because you have maybe 8, 10, 15, 20 kilometer climbs. These ones are shorter, so positioning is more important. You have to get into a good position at the beginning of the climb, moving into the climb, and because you're over it pretty quickly. It's only, kilometre and a half, 2 kilometres, most of those climbs we have here today, so that is important. The roads are pretty narrow, but not majorly. If you look at the Tour of Flanders, a lot of the roads are half the size of what we've got here. So I think the general classification men, most of them who are good bike handlers, some maybe not the best of bike handlers, don't like this pushing and shoving for positions, and that's where they need to be protected. They need teammates to take them along and keep them in a good position when we're getting to the vital point of this race.
Remember, the race finishes in Anse this year. It's going to be the final finish in Anse. We've been here since the 1990s. The talk is that the finish is going to go back to the centre of the city of Liège itself. If you imagine Anse, it's a satellite town of the city of Liège. Very big in Italian immigrant district, lots of Italian flags around. You were telling me about the pizzerias near the finish line, plenty of them about, and lots of passion for bike riding. And the fact that we haven't had an Italian victory for 11 years here since Danilo Di Luca won, it gave an extra bit of motivation to Vincenzo Nibali. And I was reading the Italian paper on the way over to do this commentary with you yesterday, and big full page spread. Nibali, I want to be the pride of the Italians in Belgium.
Yes, well, of course, in this area, Côte Saint-Nicolas, we will see as we get there into the final of this one, the Italian flags will be everywhere on hanging out the windows of the houses on the street side, and it is a one where I suppose when you see your national flag, flying there, and gives you that bit of more motivation, and if you've got any fire left in your belly, well, then you will have a go for it.
There's always fire in Nibali's belly, isn't there? Even when he was attacking and it was looking like a no-hoper on Wednesday, he was having a right old go. And they've got the team to have a go as well. They've got plenty of matches to burn. And like I said, almost each and every one of the 7 riders there is a potential winner of this race. It's absolutely crazy. Gasparotto, who's been up here before previously, he's there as well. Both his Aguirre's look in form. Pellizotti, all right, probably past his sell-by date, but he's still a very good domestique at this period in his career, and probably better on the longer climbs. Pozzovivo's got good form, hasn't he, going into the Giro d'Italia? Visconti, he can always attack from anywhere out, and Nibali still, you'd have to think, is the main man there.
Yes, well, Nibali, of course, he can read the races so well, and you know, he just when he goes in the attack, you ask yourself sometimes, you know, why does not people react? But it's just about choosing the right moment when the racing is very, very difficult before, and being able to, you know, when you have to, you know, put in your attack when everybody is feeling under pressure, and you can read that, and you just need that, you know, 2 seconds when there's a bit of hesitation. You attack, they look at each other, and then you get the gap, you get the advantage. And we did see in Milan-San Remo, of course, you know, the way he did it. Tactically he just did it so well, and he is that type of rider. We did see him in the Tour of Flanders as well. You know, he went in the attack, but he just hadn't got it in the end. I think he was suffering a bit. He was starting to tire big time, but he did try, and you know, with the team he has got, as you mentioned, Rob, I think, you know, he could, you know, put some of the riders up the road, and that's always a danger one, because if there's a rider up the road and Nibali, you know, goes in the attack, gets across to them in the final, that is major importance. If you have somebody who can carry you along for any little distance at all in the final number of kilometres.
This is what's left at the front of the race. Christian hanging on well. Big education for him. Manx rider. Ursula is the man from Direct Energie. Just in front of him from Cofidis, of course. Anthony Perez. Cofidis, who've had a bit of a change this year. Different management. A couple of colleagues from the television box, Cédric Vasseur being one of them, and of course Roberto Damiani, the Italian. They've started to win. Of course, doesn't augur well for Nasser Bouhanni, who seems to have been sidelined, but Christophe Laporte has picked up a few wins. Almost 200 kilometres ridden now in this, the 4th of the 5 monuments of the year. Last of the big spring classics, Liège, Bastogne, Liège, and after this, well, we're going to Grand Tour mode. In less than 2 weeks' time, we'll be talking to you about the Giro d'Italia. 3 minutes and 18 seconds. Now, Movistar, for the first time, have committed a rider to the front. Second wheel, one of their riders now, as Loic Vliegen has lost control. No surprise, I suppose, after being off the bike competitively for more than a month. He's done a good job for BMC. He's got the jersey on, showing what's been an emotive, difficult week. And in terms of doing something towards the end, their leader here is Dylan Teuns. Dylan Teuns, who last year won a stage race in the Tour of Poland. He had a very strong Tour of the Basque Country this year. Looked good in Brabantse Pijl. Best result here is when he was 17th a couple of years ago, when he was riding for Greg van Avermaet. He says he feels excited. He's been preparing for this block of racing for a long time. Dylan Teuns, I think, would still be a surprise winner, given the fact that he didn't have the form at the end on Wednesday, though, Sean.
Well, he would be a little bit of a surprise winner, but you know, he's a rider. I think he's improving big time. Last year he made a big step up, and you never know what he could do here today in the final. It will all depend on what way, you know, the bigger riders, the bigger favourites race this final kilometres. There could be a rivalry there. They could, you know, be a little bit of looking at each other. We've seen it, you know, in the big classics, in the monuments. We've seen it in the past, and
this year, it's a lot of the time it's been about hesitation behind, hasn't it? This year,
it certainly has, and you know, that's what the riders like Dylan Teuns will be trying to, you know, take advantage of. And you know, if he goes away in the final 10 or 15 kilometres, and there's a bit of, you know, looking and marking and tactics being played by the other by the big favourites for this race, well then you could, you know, manage to get away in a group and stay out there in front, and that will depend how many teammates the big favourites have got here. It's looking good for the big favourites at the moment, because they all have quite a few in here the way the racing is going, but we still have got 61 kilometres. It's a long way to go on this one, and if, you know, if there's somebody really opens it up, if somebody starts attacking, well, we could see this, the main peloton of favourites, this could explode big time.
And we're on the longest climb of the race right now, Col de Oisier. Peloton following up behind, and look at all those teammates for Valverde in the blue. For Dylan Teuns, the man we were talking about a minute ago, he's got a former winner to help him out. Simon Gerrans now rides for BMC Racing, let's not forget, and there's also the likes of Damiano Caruso, Alessandro De Marchi, guys who are going to be in good form as the stage race season approaches. Look out for them. The man at the front for Movistar, by the way, is Winner Anacona, Colombian, one of the top trusted domestics in Movistar. There's Jose Joaquim Rojas, who seems to be Alejandro Valverde's guardian angel on the road at times. They're both from the same region in Murcia.
He's his chauffeur.
Drives him around. Well, he's done a great job over the last few years, because if you think back 5 to 10 years ago, Rojas at the start of his career, he was a sprinter, wasn't he? He was a guy who could sprint well on a hard day, won the odd bike race himself, but the way he's converted to being able to climb and look after Valverde has been quite astonishing.
Yes, it has. Well, he's turned around from being a sprinter really in his earlier days to be, a great all-rounder. His sprint is not anything like it was, I think, in the earlier part of his career, and because he's just riding on the front, up and down climbs, and he's improved majorly in the climbs, and that's the reason, like, he is one of Valverde's right-hand men, and you can see that Valverde, he's just put him in front of him. He has confidence in him as well, because he knows that he can guide him. If something go wrong, he can trust him. He's not going to do anything crazy, and that's something you need as well, that you have a rider from the team that do not panic if there is something go wrong, if there's a crash in front of them. But it's difficult to see a crash, because we can see Valverde, he's very much at the front of the main peloton at the moment.
Always kept towards the front when it matters. And Mikel Landa, let's not forget how good he's been in the last couple of races as well. He's another guy who's been racing everywhere. He was brought over to race on the cobbles, was Mikel Landa. Rode in a couple of the Flemish races. He was involved actually in the big crash that decided the direction of Edri Harelbeke. They called it the Massaval, didn't they, in Flanders? The mass fall, the mass crash that left about 2/3 of the peloton behind. That wasn't a great introduction to cobbled racing for him, but he's tried all sorts of different stuff out in the last few weeks. And look out for Movistar at this year's Tour de France, because if you're not aware yet, the talk is that it's going to be Valverde, Landa and Nairo Quintana all together at the Tour, and that could be either a bit of a hiccup and a bit of a mess up on their part, or it could be terrorising for the other teams.
Yes, well, I think it will be an interesting one, but looking at today, when you have a rider like Mikel Landa there in the final, if he's in that final today, when you go to Saint Nicolas, or maybe Roche or Fauchon, some of those climbs, if there's other riders going the attack, Nibali for example, some of the riders from Team Sky like Mikael Kwiatkowski, those riders, well then Landa could be the one that they could use there, put him up the road. He will just mark the others. He's not going to contribute in the pulling, and Valverde will hopefully get a free ride from behind that the others will have to do the chasing. So the teams who have maybe only one rider capable of winning, they have to be really careful, because that's the way the race could be won today. It could be a group of riders that are really protecting their favourite in the team. They could be the ones who come out the winners at the end of the day.
Well, the tactical combinations, possibilities is absolutely fascinating as this one starts to build up with 57.8 kilometres to go. Still just over 3 minutes. It's almost as if there's a bit of a stalemate at the moment, but the weaker riders from behind, with every climb that passes, are going out the back of the peloton. We're starting to see, as Sean was saying a minute ago, those favourites just appear towards the front at the right time now. We're getting towards, well, for the peloton, it's the end of the Oisier. Next will be the Maquisard. That will top out with 47.5 kilometres to go in 10k's time. Then it's La Redoute. Then inside the final 20 kilometres, Rochefoucauld and Côte de Saint-Nicolas with less than 6k's to go. And I'm guilty of this as well, Sean. That final climb into Anse, I always forget about it. I don't consider it a climb, but it is another climb.
Yes, well, it can be advantage for some riders. It can be the killing off of other ones. If you're hanging in there, and if you're a pretty good rider, fast man in the sprint, say better than some of the other big favourites here, you just try and hang in, and this final run up in Jans, that can be the killer for you, because it's a long one. It goes up for well over a kilometre, 1,200 metres, and it is a real difficult one to manage after such a distance and such a difficult race.
And that race is getting more and more difficult. The group is getting smaller behind. The favourites are becoming more visible. There's our first sighting of Bob Youngles as well. Robert Hazing, Rigoberto Urán, Jesus Herrada. They're all there. They're all waiting. 56 k's to go. Just 4 remain from the breakaway with 54 kilometres to go on the oldest of the great one-day classics. It's Liège, Bastogne, Liège, 104th edition of the race. At the moment, it's Jérôme Bougny who's just at the bottom of your shot there, a little further out than everybody else. Loic Vliegen is stuck in the middle. He's lost contact with the group. Still racing away, getting that BMC jersey on the television after what's been a very difficult week for the team with the loss of their founder and benefactor, Andy Rees, who very sadly passed away at the age of 75. Just over 3 minutes back to the peloton in the meantime from the lead of the race. Mind you that if you're just joining us, the initial break was of 9 riders. Manoir de Lebiola. Not a bad place if you can get it. My views might be a bit obscured though. Plenty of woods around. It's a beautiful part of the world, this. It's one that I know that the man sitting next to me knows very, very well from racing and his time living in Belgium as well, although I think you lived quite a long time in Flanders rather than Wallonia, Sean.
Yes, well, I did all my years in Belgium was in the flatter regions of Belgium, let's say. But you know, I did a lot of the races here, and it's a totally different compared to the Flanders. Wallonie, you know, you have this difficult terrain, a lot of, you know, hilly area, but you know, a great place to ride your bike. And when you get the real nice conditions, as we're getting today, it's a spectacular place to go on some bike rides.
It's almost like the geography helps form the different characters of the two sides of Belgium as well. There's the two completely different languages. And of course, there's the old industrial heartland as well. Flanders, traditionally more farming. Now then, let's go and speak to the new French hero, winner of Flèche Wallonne. Here's Julien Alaphilippe. Well, we've got a really strong team with Philippe Gilbert, Youngles, Schachmann as well, who was in very good shape during Flèche. We've got a strong group, and it's going to be our strength, I think, in this race. So Saint-Nicolas or Ans? I like both of them. If they finish at the top of Saint-Nicolas, that'd be good for me. It's an important difficulty, crucial for the finish. I love this race because it's really difficult. Of course, from the start to the finish, it's going to be a beautiful one. I think he'll only still be saying that, Sean, if he wins it at the end of the day, because it won't be so beautiful if he's beaten down into second or third again, and it's the same old man that wins it in Alejandro Valverde. Julien Alaphilippe, he's no kidding anyone. He's in this to win it. We know it, don't we?
Yes, well, he's definitely in here, and you know, the conference has to be rocket high after his performance midweek, and yeah, he will be hoping that he will be real good in the final. And that's something in bike racing. You know, you're out there for 5.5, 5 3/4 hours, maybe 6 hours, depending on what way they ride in the early part of the race. And sometimes you can go through a moment where you're not, you know, really at your best, and you're hoping that's not in the very final. Hopefully you get that maybe a bit further out. But if Alaphilippe is really in his best shape, well, then he is going to be another one difficult to beat here. But when it comes down to a straight out sprint, I think Valverde is a little bit faster one.
Approaching 50 kilometres to go. What's to come? We've got the Maquisard, La Redoute, Rochefoucauld, Saint-Nicolas, and for the final time, the final climb to Ans. Still not too clear about where the new finish is going to be. Somewhere in Liège, we're told. Maybe the old finish, of course, down by the river where Liège is cut in half. There's Spa. Of course, we've been past the Formula 1 circuit, close to here as well. Head of the race with 50 k's to go. 200 kilometres into it. And the gap continues to come down to just over 3 minutes. This is the Maquisard. 2.5 kilometres long. 5%. And this is all that's left at the front. Ursula, not for the first time this season in a break. Remember in one of the other two of the semi-classics that we've watched this year, he's been up there. Mark Christian's riding a really good race, the Manxman in the navy blue for Aqua Blue. And Cofidis, well, they continue their improvement this year with Anthony Perez up towards the front in the red. Jérôme Bonny is riding for Wanty Gobert, and memory serves me right, he used to be with the local Wallon development team that was a continental team. It was Wallonie-Bruxelles. It's now a Pro Conti team, and they're riding this race actually, WB Aqua Protect Veran Classic. Local rider. Always good for the home crowd to have local riders in. And we talked about Julien Alaphilippe. What's your opinion on Philippe Gilbert? Because I think he starts a monument for the 50th time today, Sean.
Yes, I think it's his 50th. His 50th monument riding, and yeah, it's an interesting one because he did ride in this race. I think he did it maybe 13 times or something. Then Philippe Gilbert, he skipped out 2 years. Of course, last year he was in top shape. We did see him in the Amstel. Then he had an injury. He did not take part.
A couple of years ago, he had that broken finger as well when he had the altercation when he was still at BMC, I think, with the motor driver during the week.
Yes, that's. I was wondering why the reason was, but now, as you mentioned, it comes back, and so it's an interesting one. But yeah, talking about Philippe Gilbert, I think he's the one who is going to try something with quick step floors. They will try and put him into a move if there's something happening a bit further out. We've seen in the last recent races he's suffering a little bit in the final Amstel. I was just a bit surprised that he did get distance on one of the climbs in the final kilometre. So I think his shape maybe has just gone a little bit over the top, and that's something is so important. You know, if you're focusing on Milan-San Remo, then you're on the Tour of Flanders. It's just that little bit too early. It's very difficult to hold that top shape right through to the Liège, Bastogne, Liège, and the Ardennes Classic. So I think that will be the tactic there. They will try and just any moves, any attacks from the other teams with some of the other riders. Gilbert will be the one who probably mark it, and Philippe will try and play that card as well. So that, you know, that tactic is going to be worked in quite a number of teams here in the final.
Well, Quick-Step added yet another win to their hefty 2018 collection on Wednesday. Alaphilippe managing to beat Valverde, as we said, on the Mort de Huy. 10 wins in one-day races this year, 7 different riders, 26 victories in total, as we see Mark Christian and Aqua Blue. Of course, they're from a level a little further down. Pro-continental team, but just in the second year of their existence. Let's not forget that Quick-Step's been going for 20 years now then. What's happened here? Christophe Masson of WB Aqua Protect Veran Classic. I'm not quite sure what the problem is yet.
He's coming to count the riders in the peloton.
He's watching the race go by. I only imagine he's had enough, or he's got a mechanical. I was starting to worry when you see the barbed wire behind him and the cameraman focuses in.
Yes, it looked...
Thankfully, it looks as though he doesn't have any marks.
No, it looks like... I was... first of all, initially I was thinking that he had a flat tyre, but it looks like that's not the problem. Is he waiting up for a teammate that is a bit further down? We'd have to just... we will see in a moment, hopefully.
Christophe Massons is one of the 2 French riders, by the way, riding for WB Veran Classic Aqua Protect. This is the peloton. Now, he's on the right-hand side here. I wonder if he's taken the wrong turn, you know, because he wasn't in the original breakaway. I wonder if he's taken the wrong turn an earlier part on the race, or he's dropped out.
You mean a shortcut?
Well, I was being a little more kind to him, but you can say that. By the way, if you're listening, Christophe, that was Sean Kelly who said that.
Well, we've seen a recent in Croatia. We see some of the riders from Aqua Blue Sport, of course, after the stage they just got totally lost, and they were not the only ones. There was quite a number of riders who, got lost in the mountain and were out there for a number of kilometres, and it's difficult to make their way back to the team cars.
Well, there's so many twists and turns in these races, particularly in this part of the world, all the small roads, and you might be off the back of the peloton going back to the car for something and on your own, and you take the wrong turn, or you're following wheels and suddenly you find yourself on the wrong road.
Yes, and of course some of the riders here, especially the riders from the Belgium teams, they will maybe be here first of all, they've been here doing a recce on the course, but also a lot of the Belgium teams, they would come here to do some training. The riders themselves would do it individually, maybe with two or three of their teammates, not necessarily their teammates, some other teams as well. They would just hop in the car, just come here for the day and ride some of the climbs. So maybe he knows the shortcuts where you don't have to go up the climbs.
Winner Anna corner on the front for Movistar. 47.9 kilometres to go, and Steve Cummings in his familiar position at the back, 163. Just in front of the rider from Groupama FDJ, Valentin Madois. They, by the way, here have David Godou riding for them. Rudy Mollard as well has been going very well on a stage in Paris-Nice. Godou, who will go to Romandie this week, but they've had a good week, haven't they, with Thibaut Pinot winning in the Tour of the Alps. No pressure, Thibaut, for the Giro d'Italia then, eh? They'll be right behind him, the French, going into the Giro d'Italia after he won the Tour of the Alps now. Thibaut Pinot.
Yes, well, of course, Thibaut Pinot, he seems to perform well in Giro of past. That's where he is, you know, very performant. And last year we did see he was excellent. And it's looking good. You know, he's coming to shape at the right time, so that's an interesting one. And yeah, it's nice to see. And yeah, of course, the French, they will be looking forward to that. And if Thibaut Pinot starts doing well in the Giro, if you have an excellent Giro, well, then they will start talking about the Tour of France very quickly. And we all know that Thibaut Pinot, he doesn't support that pressure well. Anytime they have been building him up for the Tour of France, it seems to be totally different.
Oh dear, 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 dear. Riders down. Number 222, there's Fabien Grelier, who must manage to stay up on his feet. Problem for the rider from Cofidis, that is Dani Navarro. And that's a real disappointment because he's one of the guys who could be one of the outsiders.
Yes, well, he is the one for Cofidis that could be very much in the final. He's, you know, a good climber, and this sort of terrain, the final would be something that would suit him.
Now, this is what happened. Looking at the picture as we do, and it's happened just in the second half of the peloton there, and it looks as though there are two riders who've gone down, a few others caught up. Navarro, the last to his feet. And it looks as though he's both frustrated and a little hurt. Again, Spaniard, who is a good climber, as Sean was saying, good finisher as well. Needs his bike looking at briefly. Well, I think that might be the last we see of Dani Navarro today, I'm afraid.
Not looking good. Looked like he's going to sit on the roadside there, and yeah, wondering what the problem is. And yeah, it's a disappointing one, because for Cofidis, he would be the one who should be able, you know, to fly the team colours up there in the final, but it doesn't look like that he's going to be in today's one.
Let's talk about another Spaniard. Of course, we mentioned him right at the start. It's hard to avoid. Alejandro Valverde. He's the only Spaniard to have won this race. He's won it 4 times. He has an astonishing record here. And as well as his 4 wins, Sean, he's been on the podium more times than anybody else. Today could be a very special day. If he wins here, he's level with the man that we only talk about in mythical terms nowadays, Eddy Merckx, one of the greatest riders in the history of the sport. You'd have to say Alejandro Valverde would be if he's up there with the likes of Merckx.
Yes, well, I think first of all, when you're out there, you're not really thinking of records, you're just thinking about winning the race. But afterwards, I think Valverde, if he managed to win this one this evening here, well then, you know, he will be up there in that record with Merckx, and that is an achievement to me. To be in the record books matching Eddy Merckx, it's a huge thing, and it's something. When you retire, I think the achievements and the records that you achieve when you're racing, it's when you really finish up in the sport, then you start looking back and, you know, you start appreciating them much more.
Well, if he can equal Eddy Merckx, he's got 2 more seasons potentially to even add another victory to his name, because he said this week, again, we knew that this was his intention, but he's publicly said it to the Spanish radio, that he wants to retire after the Olympic Games in Tokyo. At the minute, he has a contract until the end of next year. He carries on winning. Movistar are obviously going to give him a contract the year after as well. If he does at least equal Eddy Merckx, he already holds the outright record at Flèche Wallonne. Is Alejandro Valverde the greatest Ardennes rider that's ever lived?
Well, I think, yes, when you look at the the amount of victories he has and the amount of top place finishes definitely is. And if he actually does not achieve the victory today, but he has another 2 years possibly. And when you look at Valverde last year on the Tour of France, that horrible crash he had, I definitely thought it was going to be difficult for him to get back to the level that he had been, in the previous years. But what an amazing start to the season, the way he's come back. And it just goes to show the guy, he worked at it so hard last year. We did see in the Vuelta last year, he joined the team on rest days during the Vuelta, and he went out training with him. That shows how how focused he is, because to go along to ride with the team that are in the race, it's always difficult to do when you're not part of the team. But he went along and rode with him on the rest day. Very, very keen to get back in there, and has worked at it, big time, because if you do not really work at it 100%, you're not going to get back to the level. And he's definitely, back to where he was before that big crash in the prologue of the Tour last year.
Alejandro Valverde, we realised talking about him here that he's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. We know that everybody has different moral stances as to what happened, certainly during the late 90s and most of the noughties in cycling, and he's one of those guys who is tainted by that era as well. But he'll be 38 on Tuesday, the dominant rider in these classics in the last few years. And you talk about that long road back. I have to admit that when I sat talking about that crash last year during the Tour de France, I thought that his career was done and dusted. But the strength, you could see him 2 or 3 days later exercising that leg and knee straight after the operation in the hospital bed. The determination was there from day one. There wasn't, let's go home and think about this and see how I feel. It has been a remarkable recovery. You talked about how good he's been already this year, Sean. Here are some stats. 9 wins already this year. And to put it into context, the team has 13. So 3/4 of the wins have been brought home by Alejandro Valverde, and the latest coming just a couple of weeks ago at the GP Indurain in Spain. So Valverde, again, in fantastic form, and whatever you think of him, the stats say he is one of the top riders, certainly at this time of year. So approaching the final 40 kilometres now. Maquisard out the way. The gap down to 2:38, and look at the shape and size of that peloton. It's calmed down a little. We're waiting for a bit of action behind because it's just 2.5 minutes now, the gap. We're hearing that Dani Navarro, by the way, has abandoned. He's abandoned. He's apparently got a bit of a gash on his knee. So best wishes to Cofidis and Dani Navarro, the man who we just saw crash there a moment ago, Spanish rider. So what's to come? La Redoute, Rochefoucauld, San Nicolas, all famous names in cycling, and it's a bit like the calm before the storm here at the moment. Everybody looking around. We're off for a quick break while it all continues to build up. Fireworks coming after this. Now it's a fight for position at the front, and Movistar are at the front of it. Quick step as well with Philippe Gilbert. Astana appear on the left-hand side with Ugo Ulla as well. Geraint Thomas is doing a really good job here for Michał Kwiatkowski. The race is on. We're into the final 40 kilometres, and suddenly somebody has turned the accelerator right up, Sean Kelly.
Yes, well, we can see we're coming to a very important climb here, the Côte de Redoute, which is a difficult one. 2 kilometres long, 8.9%, and the lead into it, it's very technical, very tight road, narrow road as well. And the climb itself, as you go further up, it is, a real difficult one because the gradient is there. But again, position is important. We can see the reason why they're really pushing on here.
Approaching the entry to La Redoute, just 2 minutes and 12 seconds behind. 40 kilometres from the line, the peloton, 39 k's from the line, the break. And that fight for position is becoming pretty savage now. We've seen Geraint Thomas putting Michał Kwiatkowski into the right place. We've seen Vincenzo Nibali escorted by several riders. Movistar doing the job. Amador was up there for Valverde. In the meantime, this is what it looks like in Anse at the finish line. All calm, all quiet. We've already had the end of the women's race that yet again Bulls Dolmans have dominated. Anna van der Breggen, the winner there. Who is going to take success in the 104th edition of the men's Liège-Bastogne-Liège? This is what's left of the breakaway, and they've had a good day out so far. More than 200 kilometres, led by Mark Christian at the moment. He's the man in the navy blue for Aqua Blue Sport, and they're approaching a pretty legendary stretch of road. La Redoute comes quite a bit further from the finish than it used to do. Not as important as it used to be, but La Redoute is still La Redoute. It's been in the race since 1974. An important spot for the crowd, and the iconic photographs all come from here, don't they, Sean?
Yes, well, it's one of the better known climbs of the Liège, Bastogne, Liège, and it's been in for so many years. It goes back a long time, and it's a climb where there's a lot of the years the race have been decided on this one, and you can see that the riders know that they're being pushed by their director sportis, the radio. They're all getting the call. Okay, we're getting to Côte de Redoute. This is an important one, guys. Keep our man in front, whoever it may be. Keep Vincenzi, Nibali in front, whoever they want to keep up there. They're onto the domestiques to keep them in the good position to get onto this climb.
Big job then for the support riders here, as we see movement from the front, and of course so iconic this stretch of road that the local man has gone up the road. He wants to be the first across the top. Jérôme Bonny for Wanty Gobert, who's in search of pride, prestige, and of course a prime. 500 euros, I think you said at the top of each climb, Sean. There's a King of the Mountains prize at the end of the day. But of course this is La Redoute. You can see all the camping cars parked up in the field on the right hand side. Everybody has turned up here, whether it's to be at the bottom of the climb to wave your flag, to be in position in the same spot you might have been coming year after year to watch this race. You want to be there. Everybody wants to be at the front of the group as well. Look at how strung out everybody is now. It's one long line. In the meantime, further up the climb, a little calmer as Bonny has gone out on the attack. Look at what all that fighting for position has done for the gap. We're at 1 minute and 45 seconds now.
Yes, and that will come down very quickly, because we can see the main peloton, it's really going at a fast rate here. They're going to just charge onto the climb, and that 1 minute 49, I think that will drop down very quickly. And we can see Côte de Redoute, it's a one where so many people, even on the motorway, they park at the side and they have a look at the race as it goes by. That tells you how important it is, and we can see here big charge on in the peloton of main favourites.
Enric Mas with a big job to do. The man who recently pulled off his first professional victory in cycling. The man from the northeast of Mallorca. He's from the area of Arta, an area that's famous for being down the road from where the great tennis player Rafa Nadal comes from. He's there after that win in the Basque Country, doing a job now for Julien Alaphilippe, who sits second wheel there, wearing number 51 in the blue jersey. Third wheel, wearing number 25, is Michał Kwiatkowski. Just behind him, Geraint Thomas. Then you have Mikel Landa. After that, you've got Giovanni Visconti, who's there for Bahrain Merida. Philippe Gilbert in the other dark blue jersey. Vincenzo Nibali not far away. And then a whole host of other favourites. For the minute, Quick-Step, Sky, Movistar winning the positioning battle. This is what's happening up the front of the roast, and we talked all about the atmosphere. Look at this. There's several deep on each side. Is this something you felt back in your day as well, the importance of this climb with the fans?
Yes, well, I think the importance built for a number of kilometres further back the road, and we've seen it in the main peloton, 15, certainly 10 kilometres further down the road. It was getting more nervous. Positioning was very important, and when you get onto the climb here, if you get on in a good position, you can have a moment where you take a couple of deep breaths and relax. You say, now, well, I've done the first part of it here, I've got onto the climb in the position I need to be. But as you go further up the climb, when the gradient really kicks up, and when it kicks up to that 11%, then it's the real test to see how you're feeling. And the difficult thing is here, you can be feeling pretty good, but there can be 3 or 4 or 5 of the other riders here who can be feeling better. And that is the interesting thing about bike racing. You feel confident as you come onto the climb, but the other riders seem to be that much better when you get into the real important part of it, and that's when you start thinking to yourself, oh, there's somebody going really good here, because I feel okay but they are better. And that's the unknown thing, and that's the great thing about bike racing. But you just have to keep on fighting. As we can see now, there's a little bit of a downtime here, and the breakaway, of course, have been hanging out there for quite a long time. I think they could have swallowed up the breakaway 35 kilometres further down back the road, but they're just allowing them to hang out there to calm things down, and that suits a lot of teams. It suits the like of Movistar. Just allow the brakes to be out there. That calms affairs back in the peloton here.
Romain Bardet being protected and helped by Michael Chahel, man who helped him out when he had a mechanical in the first 20 kilometres of the race today. Sergio Luis now, the Colombian champion, a little further back in the group for Sky. Geraint Thomas still looking good up at the front with Michał Kwiatkowski though. There's Rafał Majka wearing number 91 for Bora in the green and black. Laurie Warbass, the national champion of the United States of America, there as well. And Serge Pauwels for Dimension Data. Tom Jelte Slagter. Here is Thomas on the left-hand side. There is Mas on the right in the middle of your shot. The winner on Wednesday, Julien Alaphilippe, and Vincenzo Nibali at the back in the red jersey has just gone past one of those flags you were talking about, Sean. It's his very own Sicilian island flag, just about 100 metres further back from where he is. They've hit the 12% gradient, up to 17% there. That's how the hill snakes up for 2 kilometres. It averages at 8.9%, and it's probably the most iconic climb in the Wallon region, this one. There's that motorway you mentioned, Sean, behind as they seem to go a little slower to look now then. Number 21, Wout Poels towards the back, alongside him Theo Gegenhardt. No surprise that Poels might be struggling a little here. We're into monument territory. We're well over 220 kilometres into this race, and this is only his 3rd day back on a bike after that broken collarbone at Paris-Nice. So the champion a couple of years ago, Sky's first monument winner at the time, just losing contact.
Yes, well, it's understandable if you have been out for a number of weeks and you haven't been, racing consistently. Well, then you're going to get caught out at a moment, and when you get over that 200 plus kilometres, that's when it really starts to kick in. And not surprising that Wout Poels is in difficulty. We see Vliegen as well from BMC Racing, another rider who normally would be out here with his breakaway companions. He should be the strongest one really, but because he's come back from injury, also suffering a bit further down the road.
Enric Mas doing a good job here, Spaniard. Blue jersey for Julien Alaphilippe now. Bob Jungels on the left-hand side making his way up. Bob Jungels in the future could be a very good rider for this sort of race. You'd say that it's one of the types of race that's made for him, as you see Jesus Herrada there, Spanish champion. Bauke Mollema towards the back in the red jersey. Robert Heesink as well. A couple of riders from Education First Draft Back struggling towards the back. They have a really good team on paper for this race, by the way. Not just Rigoberto Urán, but also Mike Woods, Pierre Roland, Alex Howes and Lawson Craddock, who was top 10 last year, and Steve Cummings just losing contact as well.
Yes, well, he is on the rear, as we've seen him, earlier on in the day, and he's a position that he sits in quite a lot. But he's looking smooth there. The riders are getting into difficulty. He's just riding by them. But if you're really going for this one, well, then to be in the position where Steve Cummings is not the place to be, because you're going to have to make so much effort. Riders losing contact all the time. You have to come around those riders and close down little gaps being left by them in front of you.
Jérôme Bougny on his own now. Struck out the bottom of La Redoute. And that'll be a moment that's replayed on the television at his family home for a few years to come when he attacked there. And the Wanty Gobel man taking in what fluid he has left. Mas pedalling away. Jungels has just slotted in into 2nd place, so there's more firepower to back up Alaphilippe, and it seems that Quick Step have flipped the switch now, and it's game on for them.
Yes, well, it's a position now that Quick Step are going to try and continue on setting the pace here. They will be hoping that some of the other teams will take up the work on the front of the main group of favourites here as well. But this is quite a big group, and nobody going in the attack for the moment. That tells, I think, the pace being set, by Mas is, quite strong here. Nobody thinking of going in the attack, but it's still 34.9 to go. It's a long ways, to control with your team, so they'll be hoping that they will get some help from the other teams of the favourites.
Is the race too hard nowadays? Is that why we're seeing everybody waiting?
No, I don't think it's too hard. When you look at the final today, they took out that hill after
the cobbled climb we've had, isn't it?
Yes, after Saint Nicolas, which was, I think, a good move because it made it a bit too much, too difficult in the very final. But the weather conditions, I think, that will suit a lot of riders. If you had very cold, wet conditions here, well, then it would be a totally different race, and we'd have a different number of riders in the main peloton.
La Redoute done and dusted. Join us again in a minute for the next. Welcome back, everybody. We're waiting for those fireworks to go off. Another year passed, another year without an attack on La Redoute. This group did look to be motoring on about 20 kilometers ago. It's still strung out here, and Quick-Step have gone to work, but it's still a large group with 34.5 kilometers to go in the 104th Liège, Bastogne-Liège. Approaching the Côte de la Roche-au-Faucon. That'll come in around 15 kilometers time. 2 classified hills still to go, the Roche-au-Faucon and then Saint-Nicolas. Jérôme Bonny, the rider from the French-speaking part of Belgium where we're having this race, is at the front of it. Riding for Wanty-Gobert, he's just a minute ahead of the chasing peloton now. Chasing peloton that's strung out, but we're still yet to see those big attacks. 2 of the classified climbs left. Roche-au-Faucon's the next one. Doesn't come for another 15 kilometers, however. And again, if you're one of those riders who wants to make it hard for the likes of Alaphilippe and Valverde, time is running out. But, of course, you've still got 2 big attacks and ramps on which to attack. And if you're thinking of Vincenzo Nibali, next climb, Sean, is where he's had a go before. 2012, he went out on the attack. He was caught in the final kilometre by Maxime Glinsky on the day. I wonder if he's thinking of the same launch pad.
Well, I think there's a lot of riders thinking of the launch pad, but you know, can you put the launch pad into motion? That is the question, because Quick-Step are pushing on big time here, but will they be capable of, you know, continuing? We can see more Quick-Step riders coming to the front, and the interesting one here is between the Côte de Redoute and the next one, Côte de Roche-au-Faucon, there's that almost 15 kilometers. That is the danger point, because if you knock down your pace, knock down your speed in the front of the peloton, there's many riders will try and go on the attack then. So it's a difficult one. You have to keep the pace quite high. That way you will stop those attacks from coming from the riders who have, you know, numbers here, and they will try and put riders up the road to make it difficult. But if Quick-Step can continue on setting the pace we can see there at the moment, but that is a difficult task because they're going at a fast rate.
Talking of all things difficult, that's not good news. Larry Warbasse is down, the champion of the United States, and Nathaniel Berhane, who came all the way from the Tour of the Alps just to ride this race. Good climber, former Eritrean champion. He's down and hurt. And you talked about the road furniture, Sean. I'm afraid it's claimed 2 victims there.
Yes, and we did see a moment ago our leader out in front, Monnier. He had to make a correction as he came into that corner. So it was one where, you know, we could see problems in the peloton, and here we have it, some riders going down, and, you know, at this point in the race they are pushing on at such a rate. We can see here somebody just making the correction and taking some riders out.
Oh, and it was before they got to the bit of the road furniture there. He was just losing the back wheel. It's Larry Warbasse who's gone down, and he's taken Nathaniel Berhane with him. And of course, with that little mark there, it could have been so much worse for Berhane.
Yes, well, of course, when you arrive into that corner, you see the line you're going. It's the straw bale, and then you try and correct it. You go on the brakes a little bit. You're on the white line as well, and if you go a little bit too heavy on the brakes, well, then that's what happens. You can slide out, and I think that was the problem for the Aqua Blue rider.
Yeah, and Larry Warbasse and Aqua Blue, one of the teams on disc brakes as well, so maybe an example of the different bits of braking power as well going into corners there.
Too good.
Well, that was one thing that was suggested, wasn't it, when disc brakes came into the peloton? No, it's not a rough, a cut and dried example there, because they're going around a corner, and anybody, whether you're on caliper brakes or disc brakes, you can make a braking error there.
Yes.
But of course, disc brakes, the power arrives much quicker.
Yeah, well, it's known that the disc brakes are so good. If you go a little bit too heavy, well, then you're going to block your rear or possibly your front if you do that, and you're going to start sliding. So the disc brakes is something that you have to, you know, be light on them. They are very good, they're exceptionally good, and sometimes they can be too good if you get into a panic situation.
Marc Christian is going to be the next to be caught. The gap just 33 seconds from Bonny to the peloton chasing behind. Quick-Step have just added another man into second wheel there. It's still Enric Mas, the Spaniard, controlling things at the front as he was on the last climb, but Max Schachmann, young German rider who had injury problems at the end of his first professional season last year, scored a maiden top 10 in a classic on Wednesday. He's just slotted into second place there, and he looked really strong in Flèche Wallonne. Quick Step suddenly have a train at the front.
Yes, well, they have riders here in reserve. We can see also the other rider from Quick Step, Seri. He's also Peter Seri. He's a specialist in this final. That is the train that he is really performant on, and they are continuing on to set a strong pace. They have to now, because, as I said, this is the area, this is the part of the route where if they do knock down the pace, well, then they're going to be wide open to many attacks from different teams, different riders. So they have committed and they're continuing on with it.
By the way, in the car for them today, the very colourful Davide Bramati, Italian, who's known for wearing his heart on his sleeve. He said before the race that everybody's motivated for the final challenge of the spring. Confidence and enthusiasm are flowing through the team. Flèche Wallonne was good. They said they're ready to let their legs do the talking again here, and this is what's left. Into the final 30 kilometres of Liège-Bastogne-Liège. 37 seconds behind the lead of the race. Just one rider leading the race at the moment. This is the next man to be caught, Marc Christian. Just over 10 kilometres now until the next climb, the penultimate of the classified climbs. It will be the Côte de la Roche-au-Faucon, and Marc Christian, part of an original 9-man breakaway. Man from the Isle of Man, riding for Aqua Blue, the Irish team, is going to be the next rider to be taken back by the peloton. Aqua Blue did well to get 2 riders into the breakaway today. They'll be disappointed that one of their leaders has just crashed, however, in Larry Warbass. Was back up on his bike quick enough, as we see movement on the right hand side. Kwiatkowski just had the hand on the back there from Julien Alaphilippe. On the left hand side of Alaphilippe you can see Tim Wellens. I gather there was a bit of aggro in the Belgian press this week between Wellens and maybe Van Endert.
They sure were, and I think Marc Sargent was trying to calm things in the past days. He said it was just a reaction after the finish from Wellens, and I can understand. Jelle van den Dert, he was on the front, and you start setting a pace on the Mur de Huy. It's a difficult one to make the pace, not alone to have to look around to see where your teammates are sitting, and it can go wrong for them. And I think he was thinking he was doing a good job, but then he probably realised that Wellens was a bit further off and decided to go, for his own glory. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But they are talking, and we did hear some of the pre-race interviews that they're, going to play a number of riders in the team. So that seems to be understanding for today.
Yeah. 28% the gradient on the Mur de Huy. It's ridiculous. It gets to a point where the gradient is so difficult that it's almost impossible to keep looking after teammates when everybody's sprinting around you, when there's movement. It's every man for themselves, isn't it, on there towards the end? Yes,
well, on the run into the end of Flèche Wallonne, the Mur de Huy, it's just hectic. It's more hectic than being in the sprint to the line in a normal, flat stage, and it's all a fight to get onto the climb. And if your teammates that you're working for cannot keep your wheel, that is, I think, the mistake from your leader. And if he's your protected man, he has to make sure that he can do that. But sometimes that's a bit easier said than done, because there's so much pushing and so much fighting per position. But as you said, Rob, it's such a difficult one to have a look around, because when you get onto the Mur de Huy, the gradient is so difficult. You just can about focus on what's out front.
Well, there's Tish Benoot to add into the equation for Lotto Soudal as well, and they've got a really strong team for these races. Another strong team who we talked about at the start, Gorka Izagirre at the front on the left-hand side for Bahrain Merida. Behind him, Giovanni Visconti there as well. There's a line of 4 riders now. Tish Benoot, who we mentioned a moment ago, just on the left-hand side in the gutter there, trying to move up for Lotto with the red jersey on. Through the middle, Team Sunweb with Tom Dumoulin, winner of the Giro d'Italia last year. Hoping to try and defend his crowd, is looking after Michael Matthews. Rigoberto Urán is moving up as well for EF Drapac. 172 there for Aqua Blue Sport is the rider who was just caught a moment ago. That's Marc Christian, 55 in the blue jersey. We saw him working on the front of the group. For Quick Step, Emmerich Mas is there as well. There's a BMC jersey on the right hand side, but there are plenty of BMC jerseys at the front of the peloton as well now.
Yes, and we can see there that for Tunes are the protected man, of course, and we can see Simon Gerrans just a moment. He was riding in the front, keeping their leader in a real good position. We can see it's really pushing on here at the moment. There's a lot of into that corner just a moment ago. We could see there was a lot of competition for places.
Competition for places that had existed since this race first began back in 1892. It was started by the RC Paysan Club Liégeois. Léon Roy, a member of the club that organised that first race, was a Belgian. He was the very first winner. He actually went on to win the opening 3 editions of Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Opened to professionals 2 years later in 1894. And here we are in 2018. Who's going to be the winner of the 104th edition? This is Jérôme Bougny. If he were to win, it would be some story. It's not going to happen. He's been in the break all day long. He's enjoying his last few moments at the front of his home race. Goes through his own territory in the French-speaking part of Belgium here, the area known as Wallonia. 10 seconds is all he has on the group behind. It's been some ride by this man, hasn't it?
It has been a strong ride because he's been out there for a long time in the breakaway, and the way the peloton have been going in the last 15 plus kilometres to hold on, he's putting in a real strong ride. We did see he was doing well over 50 kilometres per hour a moment ago, and to be able to do that at this point in the race, taking into consideration the kilometres they've done, the amount of time they've made out in front, he's putting in a real strong performance.
Well, Eddy Merckx has won this race on 5 occasions. Moreno Argentin and Alejandro Valverde have each won on 4 occasions. Léon Roy, we just mentioned, won 3 times. Alphonse Schleppers won 3 times as well, as did Fred de Bruyne back in the 1950s. A record could be equalled today. If Valverde wins, he could join Eddy Merckx with 5-star Liège performances. Julien Lafilippe, the other big favourite, could be France's first winner for 38 years. Bernard Hinault, in very different conditions to the beautiful sunny day we had today, was the last winner for that great cycling nation almost 4 decades ago now, back in 1980. 6 seconds for Bougny, who stretches out the last few metres of his ride. And I think that's the last shot we'll see of him from behind. He's about to be caught. One long line, 23 kilometres to go. We're approaching the penultimate climb of the day. We're approaching the part where Andy Schleck won this race 9 seasons back when he attacked on the Côte de la Rochefoucauld. We're approaching the part where Vincenzo Nibali had his previous on this hill. In 2012, he went solo on the descent from the climb, only to be caught in the final kilometre, and it's Nibali's team who's taken over from Quick Step to ride at the front. Does the shark plan on biting? Giovanni